hraadvisory.com. Eric Coffin is the editor. Eric, thanks so much for finding time with us. I always appreciate that you make time for us here on Money Talks.
Thanks very much for inviting me, Michael. Luckily, my son was here because my cell phone's gone.
Oh, there you go.
Isn't dialing properly.
Well, all good then. Hey, let me just ask, get the first overview of the market. You guys you try and find these brand new situations, these underdiscovered kind of situation. You've done very well, especially in this environment with the huge recovery we've seen in commodities. It's got up and downs, of course, but over the last 3 years after an abysmal period. But what's the environment right now? You've had that initial pushback. You've got gold, for example, trading pretty solidly above 1,300 now. What's the environment like right now for companies?
Right now, we're still in I would call it a selective environment. If you go to any of these big mining conferences, there's no shortage of guys moaning and groaning, but companies that have strong projects and strong management, they don't seem to be having a huge amount of trouble finding money. I mean, there's several companies on my list that have done $10-20 million placements in the last month or so, but it's definitely selective. I mean, there's a much larger group of companies that are still finding it a bit challenging. We're just sort of at the cusp of the part of the cycle where you would expect, based on history, that commodities in general and metals in particular would do particularly well, and that's sort of when the crowd shows up. We're not quite there yet, but I think we're getting close.
And within that sphere, do they look? I mean, how important is the actual price? Silver trading $16-17, gold trading, as I say, above 1,300. I mean, do you find it easier if it goes above 1,400, for example? Is it that price sensitive when you're looking at these situations?
I think it is, because really with the long, horrible bear market we had, it decimated a lot of the specialist funds. And although some of those funds have really come back, if you want to see the really big money come into the sector, it's normally the generalists. Most of those generalist funds and investors, they don't really pay that much attention to this stuff. So they look for technical price levels, and that's usually when you see them come in. And if gold, for instance, has gone up to and not gone through 1360, 1370 3 or 4 times in the last few months. I think if you saw it cross that and hold it, get to the 1,400 level you mentioned, you would see a lot more generalist money come in. And, this is not a very big sector. So when we really have fun is when the generalists show up, because the scale of money flow is just so much bigger that it moves things a long way.
And let me go to, again, within that kind of an environment that you're operating in right now, are you still finding, like, I remember chatting and you gave some wonderful recommendations that, I'm going back a couple of years. How is it for you finding investments right now, finding these younger companies, newer companies that are in the development stage?
There's a lot of interesting stuff out there. I mean, I guess you could broadly say there's 2 types of companies I follow, and one is development level. That's companies that have a resource they're working on or about to come out with economic studies. And, I look for top quartile companies that I think will be takeover targets. Essentially, that's the end game I'm looking for. The other group is earlier stage, big picture targets, preferably large scale ones, basically things that can get investors and traders in this sector excited. I haven't had too much trouble finding those. I'm pretty selective. I try not to have too long a list of stuff I'm following, but I have come across a few things that I think are going to be big stories this year, and I think will get a lot of attention.
Well, I think one of the ways, just so you know, I always think of kind of the work that you do, and we've got other good analysts, not in your sector, but same kind of thing, like the people at Keystone Financial. This is why people should get an advisory letter. Go with someone's got a track record, but you've got to stay on top of this stuff. This takes, real hands-on stuff. Sometimes in the blue chips, I mean, I'm not saying people shouldn't watch them, but the information is so available, when you're talking about a well-known company. But in this case, you need someone doing all the work, and you've got to stay on top of this, whether it's what are drill results, what's the management doing, as you just alluded to earlier, have they been raising capital? To me, it's just the perfect example to get someone with as many years experience as Eric Coffin and just get them to do the work if you're interested in that sector. So I'm always loving when I read your stuff at HRA Advisories, because I kind of think, I'm glad Eric's doing all that. I don't have to.
Yeah, I'm not even going to tell you how many hours I work a week. It gives me a headache when I think about it. But I do agree with you. Whenever I go to, say, conferences, I commonly get asked questions about, the big obvious mining companies, and people ask why I don't follow those. And it's like, well, 100 other people do. I'm not going to tell you anything that's got any incremental value.
Yeah. No, exactly. That's what I find fascinating. Now, Eric, I'm going to put you on the spot and get you, and it will help explain the kind of work you do with a couple of examples. But I want to take a break first so I don't get cut off. So I'm going to come back. Eric Coffin, HRAadvisory.com. You can find it, HRAadvisory.com. I'll do that with Eric. I'll get a couple of suggestions from him that we can put on our radar. I'll play the lightning round. And I don't even think Eric knows about this, but I'm going to tell you about an incredible kind of opportunity for us. All of that coming your way on the Money Talks Network.
D.W. Washburn, this is your lucky day. A hot bowl of soup is waiting. A hot bowl of soup and a shave.
That, by the way, D.W. Washburn's the first single released by the Monkees following the cancellation of their TV series. What a fascinating thing. The original boy band that they brought together were not a group and made a group, like you're seeing so much more often with very successful groups right now. But we'll do more on the Monkees as we go through here. Eric Coffin is with me, HRAadvisories.com. Eric, give me an example of something that you like right now, or at least we could put on our radar screen right now to sort of describe how you approach it.
Okay, I'll give you two sort of at different ends of the scale. One company I follow is a company called Orezone Gold. They've got about a 5 million ounce deposit in Burkina Faso. About 1.5 million of that's oxide, which is what they're focusing on. They had new management come in. I've known a couple of directors forever, but they brought in some new guys, and they've completely redone the whole process flow sheet, the CapEx and OpEx. All of this stuff will come out in a feasibility study that should be out, a new one, next month. My expectation with that one is that their CapEx should drop by, I would think, at least 100 million with the changes they've made. OpEx are going to drop too. I think they're going to put up really, really strong numbers when this feasibility comes out. It's already permitted. This is one of the companies that just did a raise. They just raised 45 million with a couple of institutional shareholders. I think this thing is basically on the road to production or on the road to a takeover once these numbers are out. So, it's got a decent market cap now, but I think there's probably another 50-60% in it over the next few months. One at the completely opposite end of the scale is a company called Aston Bay. This is an interesting deal. They've got a giant property on Somerset Island, which is far north, and none of it. It has a lot of similarities to the African copper belt deposits in Zambia and the DRC, with the obviously huge advantage that it's not in Zambia or the DRC. I got interested in this because they brought in a couple new guys. One of them is Dave Broughton, who's a co-discoverer of Kamoa-Kakula, which is the world's biggest high-grade copper deposit in the copper belt in Africa. He sees a huge amount of similarities. These guys will be doing the first real drill test of this deposit concept, and this is one of those stories where kind of classic drill speculation, go big or go home. I think they'll get you're already seeing increasing market attention. I think there'll be more. These kind of plays, what you want to do is you want to try to get in early. You want to ride the speculative buying a bit, take some money off the table before the drill results come out to lower your risk, and then cross your fingers with everybody else.
Well, that's a great example. As I say, I know that in the HRA advisory that you actually give sell signals and buy signals on that. And I hope you're sitting down for this, Eric, because I was talking to people in your office, and I said it's really good for people to get an example of how you go about your work. And I smile when I hear that, because I know it's over 20, coming into 25 years experience doing exactly what you've just described. But I just want to let everybody else know, if you go to moneytalks.net, or you got an opportunity to get this full analysis and an example of a buy alert, because I know you're putting one out on Tuesday, May 15th. It's coming, and people can sign on and actually get that alert along with his paid subscribers. So you get a really good example of that there, and it's really simple. Just go to hraadvisory.com, hraadvisory.com, and you'll be able to get that, and we're going to put it on moneytalks.net also. So that is an opportunity for you, and I'll explain that a little bit more. But so Eric, so I said sitting down because I don't like springing that surprises on my guests like that. But that's a great example to see how you follow through things, the kind of service that you provide. But I think it gives people, I love them to have the idea of what kind of things you think about. Someone with a 25-year background in the mining industry, corporate finance, all of those different things. And as I say, this is one sector I really believe people, there's huge opportunities, but they also need a lot of help, and they need a lot of expertise. So that's why I'm kind of excited about making that opportunity available at that point. I'll give more details on that coming up. But Eric, let me just finish with one really quick thing, because I want to do the lightning round with you. But one of the things you just mentioned there is, it took me years to really get the importance of management when you're talking about newer companies. And I always thought it was important. Gosh, now I think it's like the number 1, 2, and 3 in the list. People who know what they've done it before, they've got a track record.
Yeah, I mean, it's extremely important. I mean, it's not a coincidence that there are some people that are serial successes in this or any other sector. They just have, whatever that royal jelly is that gives them the insight to be able to find these things early and make discoveries. The only caveat I would add to that, and again, this is where, experience comes in. As much as I am a follower of management, I'm a little bit careful sometimes about situations where I think management's profile is so high that the market overpays for it. Because I do find I get sent early stage deals that get put together, and I look at the market valuation, and essentially the market's paying $100 million because it's Joe and Bob and Nancy, and it's like, I love those guys, but I'm not going to pay $100 million for them.
Yeah, that's such a great point you're making, and exactly that. That's why getting advice from someone who's been around the block several times is so important to that. Okay, let's play a little lightning round to finish off with Eric Coffin, HRAadvisory.com, HRAadvisory.com. Eric Coffin, here we go. Favorite movie star growing up?
Probably Clint Eastwood. I'm a guy. I don't like the NRA, though.
Favorite band or singer?
Probably David Bowie through the years.
Favorite holiday destination?
Probably New York. I love Manhattan. I'm a big fan.
Biggest win financially?
Sediment Gold company my late brother and I helped found, made a big discovery in Mexico and sold it.
Great stuff. Favorite hobby or activity other than work?
Probably reading. I'm a lifelong reader and a big believer that it's probably one of the most useful skills anybody can have and use.
What was the first job you ever had?
Probably like most people my vintage, my first job was in a gas station pumping gas.
And with the new technology, we don't hear that often anymore. Hey, if you could have lunch with any group of people, like let's say 3 people, who would it be?
Well, living and dead, but I'm going to try to stick to living. Probably Arthur C. Clarke. I was always a science fiction fan as a kid, and he was a incredible futurist. He foresaw so many things that came 20 or 30 or 50 years later. I think maybe Michael Lewis would be a lot of fun to have lunch with. Financial author, the guy that wrote The Big Short. I mean, he's probably got a lot of great stories. And I think maybe the third guy, and it'd be interesting to watch him and Michael Lewis together, maybe Jeff Bezos.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd want to work for Amazon, but you can't help but be impressed with this guy's accomplished in the last 20 years. It's pretty amazing.
What a great list. Here, I'm going to give you a choice. You can attend the Super Bowl or the 7th game of a Stanley Cup final, 7th game of an NBA final, or maybe the last game of a World Series. Which would it be?
Oh, I'm a Canuck. You got to go with the Stanley Cup.
There you go. Eric, I want to thank you so much for finding time for us as usual. As I say, you always make time, and it's always educational. Great stuff as always.
Thanks for having me, Michael. Really appreciate it.